Hi, hi
Hi.
everybody. It's Stephanie, and I want to say thank you for joining me today with my guest, novelist Dawn Merriman.
Hi,
Hi, Dawn.
everyone.
Hi,
Hi,
how are you?
guys.
How are you today?
I am excited to be here. Excited to talk to
Yeah,
everybody.
I'm really excited to have you. Tell us, Dawn, where in the United States do you live?
I am in Northeast Indiana. I'm in outside of a small town called Huntertown, which is
I-
outside of a small city called Fort Wayne.
Okay,
So,
and you live in a small town.
yeah, I live outside a small town. So I live out in the country of Northeast Indiana.
And then that relates to your stories as well,
Yes,
right?
all my books so far have been set in fictional small towns in Indiana that I pull little bits from one town and I put a little bit from a different town, like real towns, and I smush them together and make a imaginary city like Riverbend or um, whatever city I'm working on that week.
So are all your stories situated? Is the setting always a small town?
Always small town. My tagline is small town murder mysteries with the paranormal twist. So everything's in small town. I'm a farm girl, so cities are completely unknown to me.
Okay, and I'm from New York, and right now I'm in Hudson Valley, so I'm surrounded by the mountains, but I find it fascinating. Small towns, psychological thrillers, paranormal. So your first book, is that the
Yes.
same? Tell us about your first book.
My first book was called well, when I released it, it was called How Murder Saved My Life. I have since changed it to Field of Flies, but it actually was sort of kind of autobiographical. It's sort
Okay.
of like if I personally, because I live on a pig farm and raise pigs, and so does Zoe, if I had found a dead body, what would I have done to solve the
Oh my
murder mystery?
gosh. Oh my gosh.
So the farm is based on my farm. Even the pigs that are in the book, I know it
So
sounds strange. I have pigs as characters. Those are actual pigs that live on my farm. Zoe has a pet pig named Allie. I have a pet pig named Allie.
oh, that's so cute. That's
so,
nice.
so it's kind of interesting in that aspect. So that was my first book. They always say, write what you know. So I wrote what I knew. Of
They
course,
do
I've
say
never
that.
solved a murder except for in my mind.
well, that's all you need, right? When you write books. Now,
Exactly.
what have you been writing your whole life? Have you been writing since you were a child?
I have. I finished my first novel around seventh grade. Of course, it was garbage, but I loved it. I've been
Ah,
writing poetry and short stories since probably second, third grade, that kind of age. I wrote all through high school. I tried to get an agent when I was in my 20s. That was about my fifth novel I'd written. I thought, ooh, maybe it was good. And I had an agent, but it never sold. And then my children were born and they took all of my energy. So I would do some short stories here and there, but I just kind of took a break from writing until 2, 3 years ago because they got big teenagers and were never home. And
right,
so
right.
I switched to writing.
So, do
I
you
wrote,
remember the process of, for anyone who is interested in trying to seek out an agent? Do you remember the process or how you found an agent or did you look them up in the phone book?
well, this was 1998.
wow, things
So
were really
anything
different
that I
back then.
could tell you would probably not be helpful now. But at that time, you'd go to the library and you'd get the big book out that would list all the publishers and the agents and things, and you'd send query letters to them. Some of the process is the same. Now I'm an independent author. I don't have an agent or anything. I do it all by myself, which I prefer because I'm a bit of a control freak anyways.
Right, right. Well, a lot of people like to be self-published. They have
Yeah,
control. You get more, more share of the royalties when you're self-published. So with your first book, you said you changed the title.
I did change the title. It was called How Murder Saved My Life because the character was suicidal. She was like borderline suicidal.
Okay.
She had severe depression, which I did too. I've been very open and honest with that through all my writings. All my characters have some sort of mental issue they're dealing with. And she, through the process of the books, realizes she doesn't like that she wants to live. She finds a renewed purpose in living. And so it's kind of how the murder saved her life. Um, after the first year or so, sales was really slow on that book. I thought it sounds kind of like a how-to book. And so I changed it to Field of Flies, which ties in with a scene in the book that I don't want to spoil.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting. The book's really interesting on how her solving a murder teaches her how that she really wants to live. I know it sounds kind of trite, and it's not really that trite. It is the only one of my books that doesn't technically have supernatural in it, but she has a lot to deal with in that book.
And when did you release that book originally, with the original
February 18th, 2018.
2018. Wow, you remember the exact date and everything.
Yes.
So when you released that book, what did we have at the time? We had Amazon.
It was
right?
on Amazon.
It was on Amazon. KDP. So I'm not familiar with as a matter of fact, I am familiar with the process from 2018. So
I said 18, that'd be 19. That'd be 2 years ago. It was 28. So,
I know it was now February 2021.
Yeah.
So 2018, 2019.
I'm a writer. My math's not that great.
Yeah, what a coincidence. My math is not that great either.
But it was 2 years ago, just a couple weeks ago.
So that book was available and probably still is on ebook, correct?
Correct.
So you had to upload it to the system, and then you had to press submit. Do you remember doing that?
Oh, heck yeah.
Stress or the tension, what did that feel like?
It was the greatest feeling ever, because again, I had written several books that never went anywhere, and this was my first one that I knew was publishable. Looking back at it now, my new books are way better, but at that time I knew it was the best thing I had ever written.
Wow.
And when it went live, I just could not believe it. When I saw it on my Kindle, I literally cried.
Wow.
And then what's funny is, growing up, I lived on a different farm, obviously, and I spent all my time in my room scribbling in my notebooks, as I call it. And so the day after I hit publish, I went and drove past my old farm, and I could see my bedroom window, and I just sat on the road, and I looked at that window and thought of all the hours I had spent. You're gonna make me cry. All the hours I had spent dreaming of being an author. And I thought, I made it. And I told that girl, I said, we made it. We're finally an author. And then I went and started the next book, and I have not stopped since.
That's fascinating.
And it's been the greatest job in the whole world. I absolutely love my job. I've done 7 more books since that in the last 2 years. So anyone out there who's thinking of writing, just start, because it's the best. It is. Right. It's a hard work. It is not easy. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah, and it's not going to get done if the writer doesn't do it, right? That's the beginning. Just write the work. You need your beginning, you need your middle. Do you remember when you got to the end of your book from writing it, and when you said to yourself, wow, this is done? Do you remember that too?
Oh, absolutely. What's funny is I wrote that book in 10 days because which I can't do now. I don't know how I did it. It's fairly short. It's only 45,000 words, but I was obsessed. I did nothing but write. I went in my basement, which now I have a nice office, but that time I was just in this little desk in my basement, and I just lived there, and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And when I got to the end, I just bawled my head off because I went, oh my gosh, I did this. Now, then I went and spent 6-8 weeks editing. So my process is a little different now. I edit as I go a little more. But yeah, that even nowadays, getting to the end is just, I usually cry because you get so involved with these characters, are like your best friends, and authors generally, we work alone. I mean, I'm at home by myself, so they become like your family and your friends, and then you're done and you're sad. So it's hard
to cut off that relationship, and sometimes you feel like there's more. I have more to tell. There's more to go. More going on. But you have to reach the point where you say, you know what, it's done. I have to be finished with it. So now it's hard to disconnect from those characters. So now, are there different characters in your other books? Let's say book 2. You were so connected to Zoe.
So Zoe is a standalone, or Field of Flies is a standalone. Then I wrote Message in the Bones, which has Gabby, and there's 4 books in the Gabby series. So I got to hold on to her a little bit longer. And honestly, there was 3 books in the Gabby series. And then I got to the end and I missed her. I missed her.
Oh,
And my fans missed her. So I did a Christmas bonus called Message in the Snow. So there's 4 books in that series. And I know she and I aren't done. Like, I still have a ton of ideas of Gabby books to write, which I'm sure all my fans out there are so excited to hear. They want more Gabby because they love her. Gabby is
tell us a little bit about Gabby.
Yeah, so she's at the beginning, like literally the first line of the book is freak is a nasty word because people call her a freak. She has, I didn't even know it was called, I guess it's called telemetric, where she senses things when she touches things. I call it psychic, but when she touches stuff, she senses stuff. So she wears gloves to keep herself safe from the world bombarding her brain all the time. Her brother is the head detective, and then they find some bones and they don't know whose they are. So they call her in to help with the investigation. And that just starts a chain of events, obviously, where she gets involved in investigations and solving murders and getting chased by serial killers, and all kinds of crazy stuff happens to her.
So she's got a lot going on.
She has a lot going on. But at the very beginning, she's, like I said, freak is a nasty word. It's the first sentence. And she goes from being a freak, thinking of herself as a freak, to accepting her gifts and finding love along the way, of course, because you got to have a little bit of romance.
Yes.
And solving all kinds of crimes. Then there's her grandma Dot is like the ornery old lady that helps her out and gets involved and stuff. That series was so much fun to write.
And how long between books does it take with Gabby?
With Gabby, like in her world or in my world? In her world, they happen bang, 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 bang. In my world, the first book took me from February to October. The next book came out in November. And then I took a break and wrote some others, because I have other books too, so I've kind of mixed them in between. But it took me, let's see, I just did Snow last year, so I'd say 1 year and 3 months to do the whole series, with some other books in between.
Okay, and you have a total amount of how many books?
8. I have 8.
Do you happen to have the cover of your first book with you?
I do.
By any chance?
Let's see if you guys can see that. Like I said, It's called Field of Flies now.
That's an interesting font. I like the cover. Thanks. It's an interesting font. Do you also do your own covers? Or?
I do my own covers.
So you do it all.
In the self-publishing world, doing your own covers is a no-no. But again, I'm a control freak. So,
that's okay. There are no-nos. If you can do it and do it successfully and do it well. Covers.
But I love doing layout. I've always done layout. I've owned companies my whole life. So I've always done all my own business cards, my own letterhead, all the advertising. I have when I went to college for marketing. I never finished, but so I have a background in that anyway. So I love doing that kind of thing. And I just do them. Believe it or not, for that book, I've done so many covers. And then this is the final one. And actually last week I was redesigning covers. And I'm like, just leave her alone.
So have you ever been to a book signing? Have you ever held a book signing with any of your books?
I have not. Next month, actually, I'm going to be doing a very small one at a local library here we'll be in South Whitley, Indiana. Very excited about that.
Exciting.
So we'll see how that goes. I'm hoping for 5 people. So 5 people, please come.
Yes, 5 people. Show up to that book signing. That's really exciting. I think that's just about every author's dream after writing a book, to even just picture it in your mind and just daydream about signing books.
I daydreamed like big parties where I'd have a hog roast and we'd have, I don't know, like a pond to swim in or something, like a big barbecue party thing. So maybe someday. Right. I know most people think like champagne cocktail dinners or something. And I'm like, let's do a hog roast at a pond at my farm.
That sounds like a lot of fun, especially since the setting of your books are in a small town.
Yeah.
Right? and you
Yes.
live on a farm. So I think that really is well suited. And I think that would be a lot of fun instead of a stuffy cocktail
Oh yeah,
hour.
I wouldn't even know what to wear. Plus,
Don't you?
I'm famous for being barefooted. I think it's my Instagram thing. It says something about barefoot all the time. So if I went to a cocktail party, I'd have to wear dress shoes, and
Yeah.
I literally got
Well,
married barefoot. I mean,
did you?
I'm,
Did you get
I'm
married like on
over
a farm too, or?
it. I got married at my grandparents' out in the country in front of an old carriage house. It was awesome.
Oh, that's really
So
nice. That's
it was
sweet.
beautiful. And I
And
had the full
now
dress and those shoes. It was so me.
in touch with the grounds, with the earth. It's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing. It's a beautiful thing.
And I
Now
walked through a lot of stuff, which is bad, but that's okay.
you and your husband are auctioneers.
Yes, we are auctioneers. We became licensed auctioneers in 2013. We owned an auction house for about 4 or 5 years, and we've auctioned all kinds of stuff. He's the main auctioneer. I'm the backup auctioneer.
Suicidal. She was like borderline
I'm sorry,
suicidal.
my volume went up really high. Hold on one sec. Okay, there
Sounded
we
like
go.
me talking.
Yeah, that was you. It was the echo. It was
Gotcha.
actually the echo. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. Yeah, so we're auctioneers. Again, with the COVID, we haven't been able to do anything this whole last year, so that really makes me sad. And so I added an auctioneer into my book, Inheriting a Lease. There's a character that's an auctioneer in there. And actually that character is going to have her own series coming up
Wow.
probably in 22 if I get to it. I have so many books in here that need to come out. But yeah, and then also in Field of Flies there's an auction. I try to put little things that I know and that I'm familiar with that are different than other people, their usual experience. So
Do you
yeah.
write, I know you said you have a lot of stories in your head. So do you write one story at a time? Or sometimes are you working on a story and then there's like you get a strong feeling about another one, so you make notes? Like, how do you work when you write multiple
Well,
books?
I do one
Or
at
when
a
you have
time,
multiple book ideas?
but I have multiple in my head at a time. And what's interesting is like my newest book, Water for Murder, I literally started back in June of last summer. And I had the first 5 chapters done. I had the whole series. It's a series, serial killer series. And I have the whole series mapped out and I was ready to write. I did 5 chapters and I hated everything that I did. And I just went, I can't do this book right now. It just wasn't right. And I just had this other idea in my head that I could not stop. I'm like, stop talking to me, Elise. And it was Inheriting a Lease. And so I just put Water for Murder away and I jumped on Inheriting a Lease and I did that book instead, which are completely different, which is the one that has an auctioneer in it. She's a small part in that book. And so then I wrote that and then I did the Gabby Christmas book and then I came back to Water for Murder. So I did 2 books in between starting it and then restarting it. Sometimes I think I should write a different book every day because I have a very short attention span. A lot of writers have short attention spans. And so like, I don't feel like working on a certain book one day, I should just work on another book, but I haven't had the guts to try that yet. So I haven't done it.
And how about, I know you've been writing for a while, when you were younger. So that was all handwritten, I guess, because was that pre-computer?
It was pre-computer.
Before we had that. So
At
would you
one point
handwrite? Would you
I'm sorry?
handwrite or type on a
I
typewriter?
handwrote notebooks
Wow.
for the most of them. And then when I got to high school, I had a word processor. And I wrote a fairly decent novel called Stacy's Dawn on that book. That's what I did through high school. So funny, I didn't have a lot of friends because I'm an introvert, but the friends I did have, they're all out on the weekends, doing their thing. And I was home writing. That was what I loved to do. I'd just be home with, listening to music and writing on my old word processor. But what's sad is all that work is on floppy. And I don't know how to make it go from a floppy disk to a computer. So anyone out there knows how, let me know. I would love to transfer that book.
If anybody knows,
Oh, I'm
let
sure there's a
Dawn
way.
know. Or maybe you could Google it too. I mean, there has to be a
Yeah,
way.
floppies from let's see, this would have been 93. I'm telling you how old I am. So I'm 1993 in high school. So they're probably disintegrated by now, but yeah, that's how I spend my time. That's what I love doing.
Right. And yeah, I mean, if that's something you enjoy, that's what life is for, right?
That's
To do
right.
the things,
That's right.
to do the things that we enjoy. And look, now you're an author. You have 8
It's
books.
crazy.
And your latest book, which is your latest book?
My latest book's called Water for Murder. It's that one. And I did this cover as well.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to
That's,
make it.
yeah.
All
That's
this
really nice.
the whole series has different women in different dresses underwater. It's the Harper Lakes murder thriller series. There's a chain of lakes that in Northeast Indiana. Okay, we don't really have a chain of lakes like this. We have some lakes, but not like these. It's a chain of lakes where a whole bunch of stuff happens. So every cover has a girl in a dress underwater on it, which I just think is beautiful. And they all have the word water in the title. So I have those all mapped out, hoping to get those all out this summer. Book 2 comes out in April. It's not quite written yet, so
Oh,
hopefully.
wow.
I challenged
April. That's next month.
April 30th. I challenged myself to get it done. So, and it's on pre-order, and I'll get it there. I do well under pressure usually. So I have it all up here. I just have to.
Right, right. Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. So you have a nice body of work, and you have, those were 2 really beautiful covers. And I see your books. I see a couple of books behind you, right?
Yeah. Like this is Message in the Bones. That's that first Gabby book. And again, I did this cover. I did this cover
nice
over
covers.
and over.
Do you only do
Yeah.
covers for yourself, or do you do covers on the side for other people?
I only do them for myself.
Because you know, you can always, between books, you can always have a side business and do covers, because
I thought about it.
the covers are really nice.
I wanted to show you this too. This is just this little duck. So as I said, whenever I love stuffed animals, and when I finish a book, I get to buy myself one of these big-eyed stuffed animals. And that's the book that first line says freak is a nasty word. So I bought the freakiest looking bird I could find. But each book has its own little stuffed animal that matches the book.
Oh, I think that's a great, yeah, look at that. That's a really great, yeah, that's a great idea.
Great idea, and that way I can have all the stuffed animals I want without.
Yeah, it's fun, and it relates to your books, and they're cute. I just want to say hi to a couple of people that joined us. We have Anthony. Hi, Anthony.
Hi, Anthony.
We have Suzanne.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, Suzanne. And we have Josephine.
Hi, Josephine.
Hi, guys. If you have any questions for Dawn, please don't hesitate. And if you can, share this interview so that way more people get to see it and get to hear it. So now tell me, when you wrote as a child, was it just a hobby? Like, did you ever say to yourself, that's what I want to be? I want to be an author one day.
I always knew that I wanted to be an author.
Wow.
But I also wanted to be a whole lot of things. Okay. That one has been consistent my whole life. When I was middle school, high school, I was going to be a shark scientist, believe it or not. I wanted to be a marine biologist. I love animals. Every one of my books has animals in them, pets, farm animals, whatever. I do a lot of animal stuff. And so I wanted to study sharks. So I moved to Florida and went to high school there for a while. And then kind of got out of the whole shark situation. I now moved back to Indiana, not a lot of sharks here. I've had a lot of jobs over the years, like being an auctioneer. I used to do real estate. I used to be a bartender. For 12 years, I ran a clothing company. I ran a sign company. I've always had my own business of some kind. And it's at the time, it was always like, why am I changing jobs all the time? And now I look back and go, because I was learning, I know a lot. Well, I know a little bit about a lot of things, which helps my writing. Yeah. So it's just been kind of interesting journey how I came from that little girl sitting on my floor scribbling the stories to now writing this,
Yeah.
Even at one time I was a commercial diver. Which I haven't
Really?
done. So I really like water, which is why I'm writing about water right now.
That makes a lot of sense.
I've done a lot of stuff.
And did you have teachers that supported you, or teachers that noticed that you had a talent maybe for
Did.
creating stories and writing?
I
Did-
did actually. I was in a special education program for gifted students when I was in elementary school. And my teacher, Margie Snyder, hi, Margie Snyder, if you're out there, please call me. I've been trying to find her and let her know what I'm doing. But she was a huge inspiration to me and a huge support for my writing. And then through high school, my English teachers kind of loved me because I'd always write, like we'd have a really kind of boring essay assignment and I'd change it into something interesting. And so they were super supportive. I'd say then in my sophomore year, a teacher of mine took one of my short stories called My Name is Mud, and she submitted it to the Northeast Indiana Young Writers competition. And I thought, there's no, like, wow, that's ridiculous. But I got grand prize. And that was the first time I thought,
Wow.
I actually have a talent, because it was all of Northeast Indiana, all high school kids. So there was a ton of submissions. And to
Yeah.
get grand prize, I just thought, wow. And so actually that story, exactly as written when I was a sophomore in high school, is I use as my reader magnet. So if you go to dawnmerriman.com and sign up for my newsletter, you can see that you can get that short story. I have not edited it. It could be better if I changed it, but I don't want to change it because it's priceless to me with the mistakes in it, just the way I wrote it. But if you like a creepy short story, then go to dawnmerriman.com and sign up for my newsletter. That'd be great.
Now, and don't forget, after this interview, Dawn, I want you to add your links.
Yep.
So everyone knows how to get in touch with you, and everybody knows how to look further into your books and how they can get your books.
Yeah.
So now, are you or were you a big reader as a child?
Oh boy, huge reader. That's all I did. I grew up with a big family. I have there's 7 of us total, and most of them were into sports. I cannot kick a ball, so so they'd be off playing basketball or volleyball in the backyard or softball or something, and I'd always be with my nose in a book. My favorite thing to do would be I had a special tree. Even I'd go climb a tree and had a special spot, and I'd sit there and I'd read books. I always had a book in my hand. I can't imagine if I'd had Kindle back then, how awesome that'd have been to have,
right?
because I'd have to ride my bike to the library in Turbusco and go, which is like a 3-hour or a 3-mile ride to go to the library to get books to read. But going to the library was my favorite thing because I love books. Even now I read.
If we had Kindle and Amazon back then, you probably would have had books out. You probably would have taken that, right? You would have took that leap.
I would have.
You would have definitely had books. So tell me some authors that stick out in your mind from when you were a child.
My all-time favorite book is Lord of the Flies. Whenever anyone asks me a book, I always recommend that one. Just even though it's short, I just love how gritty it was and how layered it is. I love any book that you read the first time, it's great, and the second time it's even better. And that one was really good. Believe it or not, another favorite is Jaws.
Oh, okay.
No, totally
it's a
two
favorite
different
for a lot of people.
Yeah, Jaws. There's literally like a giant Jaws poster right there in my office that I can see right now. Jaws, more the movie than the book, is just like the best storytelling. I know that sounds crazy, but it's just, if you analyze the story of the story, I just love it. I was also huge into Little House on the Prairie. I've read all the Laura Ingalls Wilder stuff, even not just Little House on the Prairie. She's got other books. I've read everything she wrote over and over and over.
So how would you compare reading the books like Lord of the Flies, Jaws, even Little House on the Prairie? How would you compare reading the books to watching it play out on television or in the movies? Did you enjoy Lord of the Flies as much If you
Books are always better.
Did you see it on screen though? Yeah,
I
books are
think
always
I
better.
did. I think I did. I would say books are almost always better, except for in the case of Jaws. No offense to Peter Benchley, but I'm thinking the movie's better because Spielberg's brilliant. But um, yeah, generally books are better. And what's interesting is when I write, in my head I picture them as movies. Like I always write thinking, someone out there, please pick this up and make it a movie. I think all writers do that. And so I try to help them out by writing it as a movie. I try to make the scenes vivid like in a movie and not so internal. My books have a lot of action in them, not a lot of internal dialogue. Yeah, like, there is internal dialogue, but it's more external. So it's more like a movie, but on paper.
And how do you flesh out your ideas? Like, do they just like come to you, or do you sit and think?
I call it, I pick up stones, and I pick up stones for different books at the same time. So I'll have an idea for XYZ, for book A, and I'll go, oh, that'd be great in that book. And so I pick up that stone, that mental stone, and I add it to that little pile. And then in the same day, I might think of something for book C and book D, or, whatever, or a whole series. And so I call them gathering my stones. Is like the book I'm working on now, the sequel to Water for Murder. I've really struggled for the last 3 weeks. I'm supposed to be writing every day, and I just haven't been able to do it. But I know I'm picking up stones, and I keep reminding myself, yeah, but I picked up this stone today, and I picked up that stone today. And eventually I'll have enough pile that I know that I'm ready. It's very hard to explain. I'll know that I have enough that I'm ready to go forward with it. And then I just keep picking them up as I go. And a stone could be anything, as a character's name or a scene or just a twist. And then as I write, just like yesterday, I'm writing a scene. I get to the end and I think the next scene's going to be X, Y, and Z. I get to the scene I'm on, and it led me to, down a totally different path. And so then this morning I'm going, okay, well, now I got to figure out what happens.
It changes everything.
It changes. And I call it trust the story, because I find if I trust where the story is leading me and I just follow, like instead of going where I had planned, I go where this new line went, it turns out better. And I'll have characters show up that I don't know even existed until they just literally pop up on the page, and then they become super important, or a certain detail will come out. And later I'll go, that was weird. I wonder what that was about. And then 3 chapters later, it's like super important that I had that detail. And it's really, I'm just going to tell you that I don't do it. Some people call it the muse. I say God gives it to me. It's just the story comes out of me, and I just sit down and I'm just kind of help guide it along onto the page.
The process is amazing. So
it is crazy.
As these new characters pop up, where do you get their names from? Do the names just pop up too, or how does that work?
That's really funny. Is I've named so many things, because when I had a clothing company, every shirt and dress and lingerie I designed had a name. I raised pigs, and every piglet that's ever born, which would be probably over 100 now, has had a name. And so then I have to name characters too. So I'm really, really good at naming things. If they're a main character, generally I can do those, like it just comes to me. But literally, if it's a minor character, I sit here and I look around my office and I'll go, I'll pick a name I see, or I'll look at a book on my bookshelf and see a name and I'm like, oh, or I'll Google it. But for main characters, their names kind of come to me, kind of like your names do for like if you get a puppy, eventually a name just sticks. So that's names are always tricky for me because I've named so many things.
So so the names are easy. So as an independent author, or as a writer in general, what do you find, is anything a struggle, or is anything hard? Like some people find naming their characters are difficult. What's difficult for you?
Making myself sit down and write. I ain't gonna lie. Every morning I wake up and go, today I'm gonna go right to my computer and I'm gonna do this, 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 this. Then I go get coffee and I go, I should check Facebook and see if they posted something on my fan club I need to talk to. And then next thing you know, I'm like, well, Bob and Tom's on, which is a radio show here. I don't know if you guys get it.
No,
Like I should listen to Bob and Tom for a little while because I don't know, because I'm like the queen of procrastination. So the next thing you know, I'm like, oh, it's too late to write today. I'll do it tomorrow.
And social media is so distracting.
Oh, it's horrible.
But as a writer, you have to be on social media. And
Yeah, because
you have to keep up with
I
what's
love
going
it.
on.
I have some great fans. I really do. And I love to interact with them. I love to post stuff and I try to respond to every comment and try to build a relationship with them. I love that part of my day.
That's great.
So I usually start my day with that and then get angry because I'm like, you should have wrote, which is so dumb because when I'm writing, it is the high, you're a writer, so you get it, it is the highest high that you can get when you're lost in a scene and the words are coming and you forget where you are. There is nothing better than it. And so I don't know why it's so hard for me to sit down and start it. But lately, again, I don't think right at this point, this new book is still kind of churning. I'm still picking the stones up. I'm still trying to figure out, I'm trying to trust the process instead of get frustrated because I could go write that book today, but I don't think it'd be ready. If that makes sense.
Right. So when you talk about picking up the stones, those are your ideas.
Yeah.
And do you keep them in your head or do you
keep them in my
sometimes,
head.
you never write them down? How do you remember them all?
Well,
How
I'm
do you
going to
remember all those stones?
steal something from Stephen King. I'm going to paraphrase it because I used to write them down. And at some point I read Stephen King said, don't write them down because if they're good enough for you to remember later, they're good enough to use.
Yes, I
Very
remember
famous
that.
quote. Yeah,
Yep.
and so I just stick with that. I do have my phone. I'll say, hey Siri, text ideas, which I literally have a contact in my phone called ideas. That if I think of something, I'll have her. Or oh my gosh.
Oh. Oh my God, that's so
I
funny.
wasn't actually talking to you. That's hilarious. So yeah, that's how that works. Is that she was gonna.
Siri is ready for those ideas.
Siri is ready. And so then I have them all in one place. And then sometimes the story ideas hit me all at once. Like when I did Marked by Darkness, I was obsessed with this idea of what would I do if I lost my whole family? Because in Marked by Darkness, she's a detective who, and this isn't giving anything away, it's in the blurb. She's a detective whose family was killed by a serial killer and she's the only one that survived. And I thought, what would I do if I lost everyone? I said, they better all come back to haunt me and keep me company. And I said, and I would go live in the woods by myself with my pigs, and that's all I would do. So that's what she does, Mary Beth does, is she moves to the woods with her pigs and her dog, and her family comes back as ghosts or hallucinations. Is kind of up to you to decide how that plays out. But that all came to me like a lightning bolt, that's what it was going to happen. And then it did not take very long to pick up all the stones. It was more, my husband and I he is the best, I swear. He doesn't like to read, but he is like an intrinsic storyteller. So I can come to him and I can say, I have this idea for this book. And then I remember this specifically for Marked by Darkness, we spent like 3 hours going over the story. And then basically one night had the whole thing more or less mapped out. And that was one that fairly well stayed on track. That book was really strange when I wrote it. I was so into it. And it took, when I was done with her, because it's extremely emotional. You guys have to read it. It's really a different take on a serial killer thriller. And there's just a lot of stuff in it. But I was like literally in a depression for 2 weeks when it was done. Because I missed Mary Beth. I'm like, I miss her because I was in her brain, like completely absorbed in that book when I wrote it. And then it was over. I was really sad. It's kind of funny, but it wasn't funny at the time, but it's kind of funny. And my husband's always like, "You'll write another book." I'm like, "I know, but it won't be her." It was bad. I was like a child.
It's just not the same. So when you get really deep and involved with your character and with your story while you're writing, and then say you're done for the day, does it linger with you like mood wise, and you have to like, it takes a little bit to step out of it, or are
Yeah.
you able to just like let go just like that?
It used to take more to get into it. I used to have to spend a lot of time. I wear gigantic headphones and play really loud music. And then I twirl a baton, which I don't actually twirl a baton, but I like screw around with it, pretend I can twirl a baton. And I used to have to spend a lot of time doing that to get into the groove. When I first, like my first few books, it took a lot of like 20 minutes of baton time till I don't know how else to explain it, to get into it. And then when I'd be interrupted, like the dogs barked or something, I'd be so mad, like, now I have to get back in the groove. So no, I was out of it like instantly, and it would really annoy me. But now I don't have to do all that. I can usually get into the groove pretty quickly. I usually listen to a song or two and then I'm good. And then if I stop writing, that's because I'm ready to be done with it.
Right.
I am blessed that I live at home, I work from home, and my kids are grown, so I'm home by myself all day. My husband's at work, so I can write 8 hours a day if I wanted. Probably should be writing 8 hours a day, but I don't. So if I have stopped writing for the day, then I'm done.
And then how about the farm? Do you have to like get up at a certain time to take care of the pigs? Like, how does that work?
Well, they get fed twice a day. So I go out in the morning and then I go out in the evening, and I have trained them that they get fed when I come out. You're not going to starve if I'm 2 hours later today than I was yesterday. A lot of farmers disagree with that, and they get up and they do chores first thing in the morning, and that's fine for them. I only have about 20 some pigs, so, and they're out
That's a
on
lot.
pasture. It is a lot.
Pigs.
But they're out on pasture too. All my pigs eat grass also, so it's not like they're sitting there starving waiting for me to feed them. And they all have access to water all the time. So I kind of just do my chores around when I need to do other things.
And you don't have a writing routine like you said, because you check your phone, you make your coffee.
Yeah.
So it's not like, I would imagine for
morning.
some reason farm life is like, very regimented, but it's not.
It can be. It depends on your farm. Luckily, mine's really small. And I just have the pigs. If I had like cattle, take a lot more effort and timing, especially if you have like dairy cattle, you have to nurse or you have to milk at a certain time. Luckily, I don't do that. Like I said, I like to be real fluid with what I do during the day. I don't do well on a super strict schedule. So I've just kind of created my life to just do.
Yeah. So you don't have a specific writing time. When you write, you write. When you
It's supposed to be 6 a.m. I get up super
That's
super
nice
early.
and early. If
Yeah.
you could do it.
My husband gets up for work at 4, so I'm up with him usually. So I try to screw around, do my Facebook time and my dumb stuff and be at my desk. And I'm at my desk at 6 a.m. every day. It just sometimes I'm redesigning book covers that I don't need to redesign.
You're not writing, but you're doing other things.
Sometimes I am writing, and sometimes I'm, there's days I'll get 3,000-4,000 words down. I generally shoot for 2,000 a day, which isn't a ton. I know there's a lot of writers that do 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 a day. I can't, my fingers can't type that fast.
Some do like to have a certain amount of words for the day. I just want to check in and say hello to a couple people that joined us.
Sure.
Melvin has joined us.
Hi, Melvin.
Hi, Melvin. And Bev is with us.
Hi, Bev.
And John is with us. Hi, John. And Beth. Hi, Beth. Beth was on before. I don't think I said hi, but let's say hi to Beth too. And thank you guys for joining us. And please don't forget to share this interview. And when the interview is over, Dawn is going to provide us with some links, right? You are going to add some links to the comments. So I'm curious, what do you think about writer's block? Do you believe in writer's block? Do you believe in that term, writer's block? No.
Again, okay, yes and no. I think any writer has something to say. when you sit down. But if you're really right, if I would never sit at my computer unless I knew what I was going to write. So for me, it seemed that concept of staring at the cursor blinking, you know, to me is just kind of like, well, then get up and go do something else because you're not ready. So to me,
Right,
that
right.
just means it's not done cooking. You haven't picked up all your stones, or however you want to say it, is you're not ready. So I believe in it, yes and no.
Have you ever been stuck for a long period of time where you couldn't write?
There's certain things that I sort of like that book that I started and I got 5 chapters in and then I could not, and I knew what the problem was, is I didn't know what the conflict between her and her sister was. And I didn't, it was a major plot point and I didn't know what it was. So technically, I guess that was writer's block. And I just, that's why I had to put it away. So I couldn't write for that. I don't usually go more than maybe 10 days without writing. And it's mostly just because I'm busy doing something else. And some days I can't, you know.
Do you feel guilty? Do you feel guilty when you don't write for 10 days?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel guilty if I only did 500 words this morning, then I feel guilty. I think that's what we all do. All writers kind of, you know, we think our own work sucks and we think that we're not doing hard enough. And
Yeah,
I think all artists in general are hard on ourselves.
It's so true. And how do you keep the work fresh? Like, how do you not go back to, you know, something that happened in another story? Like, how do you keep it fresh with new ideas? Because that's got to be difficult when you write in the same genre. That's got to be hard.
It is. I find myself, I'll do like little lines I'll use in different books, or just little tiny concepts, not overall concepts, but little things. And I'm like, oh wait, you said that in this other book. And I go, yeah, but in real life, you say things again. Like, you know what I mean? Like if I was friends with somebody, I'm going to say the same idea more than once. And it's hard to explain that. But as far as keeping the murders fresh, I look at my murders from the murderer's point of view. I never have, well, I try very hard never to have the villain or the killer be evil for the sake of evil, because that's where you get boring. Oh, he's a bad guy and he killed this girl, blah, blah, blah. Okay, no one, that's been done a million times. I always try to make it, and I usually will have a scene, because I write in first person present. So I usually try to have a scene from the killer's point of view. So you get inside his head or her head a little bit. Speaking of keeping it fresh, sometimes the killer's a girl because everyone expects that it's a creepy guy.
Yeah.
So I try to surprise the reader with who the killer is too, and try to make the murders different and not just the stereotypical, you know, he raped her and then murdered her. And I try never to put sexual assaults in my books. I write clean. I know that sounds crazy because I write murder, but I have very minimal
It can
cussing.
be done.
It can be very minimal cussing, and I don't do sexual assault because I don't find it entertaining. And I do, though, get graphic-ish, not like gratuitous violence, but like if I'm describing when you first see the dead body, I've tried to make that graphic, but more emotionally graphic, if that makes sense.
It does.
I try to, my books are character driven. So the murders are sometimes even just secondary. And with characters, people change all the time. So that's kind of fun.
Do you ever write something and then say, I gotta pull back a little bit. This is like a little bit too much.
If you read Marked by Darkness, there's some stuff that is just on the line. I'm gonna tell you. It's not graphic, it's not, so again, it's the emotional. That book made me cry. And even readers that are like, wow, that just got me. And there was 2 scenes specifically in that book that I stalled on because I knew they were gonna hurt to write. Like, and I couldn't do it. Like I could not, I just wasn't emotionally ready to write this murder scene. And then I did it and it turned out beautifully, in my opinion, turned out beautifully. And I tried to do it tactfully. but there's just, that book was just, man, it took a lot out of me to write. And I even said it I always write a letter after the book, like a note from the author. It's like, I bawled through this whole thing because it's so emotionally draining, but then has a little bit of humor, so it's not like all doom and gloom. But yeah, there's some scenes in there that's a little bit far. Everything else I've written so far has been a little closer to the cozy genre, where it's a little funner, a little more light. Yeah, people die, but not so. Poor Mary Beth, she went through a lot. She's a tough cookie.
So now you're speaking about Mary Beth.
Yeah.
When you picture your characters in your head, I know some writers associate characters with, celebrities. Is that ever something you do or no?
Sort of. Like Gabby, if you've ever seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine, there's Rosa.
I haven't. I've heard of it, but I haven't.
I think her name's Rosa. She's got this kinky brown hair, and she literally has a scar in her eyebrow. And I always think of her as Gabby, even though I don't know. I try to keep, even when I do character descriptions, I try to keep them sort of vague, like enough description that you know what that she has curly brown hair and she has blue eyes, but so that the reader can create their own character. So I don't really picture them a whole lot in my head. I picture them
maybe
more
they're a little blurry when you think about them.
Physically, they're blurry. Character-wise, they're crystal clear to me. But physically, because honestly, physically, who cares what anyone looks like? That
right,
makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. So I try not to, but you have to give a little bit of something. You have to give the reader somewhere to start.
Right. Oh, it's such an interesting process, right? Writing, there's so much going on, and it's really.
Yeah, you're making me all excited. I want to go work.
Well,
that's
good.
Tomorrow.
That's really good because our interview is almost over, and I'm glad if that was this interview maybe was a little bit of an inspiration to get you writing today. So normally, if you want to get inspired, do you ever pick up a book or sometimes listen to other writer interviews?
It's music. Like I said, I wear my giant headphones, and each book has its own song, like a playlist on Spotify. And I start every writing session I just hit shuffle on that playlist for that book. And now it'll be a selection of songs I picked that has the overall tone and feel. It's not so much the words, but just the general feeling. And then there's a few songs. Like there's a song called Bloodstream by Ed Sheeran, which is Gabby's theme song. So like some of my characters have theme songs. And so if I ever want to get in Gabby's head, I listen to that song. If you listen to the words of that song, it makes no sense that that's Gabby's song.
But it makes sense to you.
No, or like Don't Fear the Reaper by Blue Oyster Cult. It's a huge one. I don't know why, but if I hear that song, my brain starts going ding, 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 and I just have all these exciting ideas. I don't know where they come from. I don't know why that song does it. I listen to a lot of 21 Pilots. Pretty much anything by them gives me excited. I listen to a lot of Candlebox, and then a lot of obscure, like the Calder Band and some stuff no one's ever heard of. But it's always music to get me going. And then I switch to, after I'm in the groove, I usually switch to like thunderstorm or rain or something. I can't just sit in a quiet room because I have to totally zone out and get into my world.
Let me ask you this: as a writer, when you watch a movie or a series, do you say to yourself, well, I would have did that different? Or can you predict what's going to happen?
Absolutely.
Is it sometimes just so predictable? Or as a writer,
it's ruined even books for me, because I know there's a formula-ish to all of it. There's a story, like when I said earlier that Jaws is an excellent explanation of a story. There's a structure to a story, and now when I read a book, I'm like, well, I know what's going to come next is going to be so it's kind of ruined it for me. But why I'm laughing so hard is I don't really write horror, but I write creepy. And my 17-year-old son just 2 days ago was asking me for a horror movie recommendation. And he goes, all the horror movies suck now that you write these books. He's like, because your stuff's so much better and he's never even read them,
Oh,
but he
what a
knows this concept.
compliment.
That is a great concept, but we were dying because he knows now what a good story should have in it. Not that my
Yes.
stuff's brilliant, but
He knows what to look for.
he knows what to
Because
look
there is
for.
a formula.
And there's
Yeah.
none of it in there. So we were struggling. We found a couple of scary movies. I have trouble finding any movie I can stay awake through because I'm always tired. But yeah, it's kind of ruined it. But then occasionally, that's when I do get a book that catches my attention. Then it's like a treasure that I found. It's like, oh, so
Right,
I just
right.
savor it and I just love it.
Are you drawn to the same things that you write, the same
I
stories that
do.
you write, or the same movies that you're drawn to those movies also?
Generally, I find I like to read more of the serial killer thriller, less of the paranormal. I find that I write paranormal, so there's always a ghost or psychic or something of that nature in my books, but it's always a minor plot point. And a lot of paranormal stuff out there is like all vampire, all witch, and whatever, which is great. It's just not my cup of tea. So I kind of stay away from that. There's a few writers that I really enjoy that have just enough paranormal, where it's still like reality, I guess.
Right.
You call that.
Is there a specific movie maybe that you like to watch or that you connect to that you say, wow, I really like that?
I'm again.
Or no, not necessarily. Or
My-
how about a movie about, do you like to watch movies about other writers like Johnny Depp with Secret Window
Yes.
or Finding Forrester? Do you like writer movies?
I haven't seen those movies, but my favorite books growing up were the Stephen King ones where where it was a writer, like The Shining. The ones where they were writers. I love books. Gosh, I can't think of his name. Greg Olson, I think it was, wrote a book recently about a writer, and I love, even growing up, I love them because I wanted to be that person. Or my favorite TV show is Castle. I want to be Richard Castle, not no New York City, but oh my gosh, I'm just like, that is the dream, being a writer and then solving real crimes. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I want to do.
the best of both worlds. But
Yeah.
maybe check out Secret Window with Johnny Depp. You might
That
enjoy
one
it.
I think I have seen, yeah.
I think, oh, okay, you have seen it. Okay, Finding
long time
Forrester
ago.
is just, it doesn't have anything, it's not a psychological thriller or anything like that, but it is a writer movie and it is a good movie. I mean, there are a few out there that are really, really good. They don't make enough of those, but they are really, really good. But I gotta say, what a pleasure it was speaking
Yeah,
to
I
you
enjoyed
today, Dawn. I am so glad we got to talk. Your story sounds amazing. Guys, don't forget to share this interview. And we do have a few other people I just want to say hello to before we say goodbye. We have Kevin. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin.
We have W.A. Room. I hope I got that right. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm very familiar with the name, but I never had to pronounce it before. Hi.
Hi.
We have Gerard. Hi, Gerard. And we have Danny. Hi, Danny.
Hi, Danny.
I want to thank everybody for joining us. And Dawn,
Yes,
I especially want to say thank you. This was such an interesting interview. I'm so glad we got to talk about your amazing books.
Thanks.
And
I enjoyed it.
You are going to post your links, correct? So
I
everybody
am.
knows where to find your books and where to learn more about you, right?
That's right. The easiest one is dawnmerriman.com. I'll post them, but myname.com, pretty simple.
All right, guys. So thank you again.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.